Well, hello again, Mean Green fans and Mean Green friends, and welcome to another episode of At Home with Hank, presented by our friends at Veris Commercial through this stay-at-home effort across the nation, and certainly here in Denton and around the campus of UNT. We've tried to respect that, but we've also tried to do a little work of getting you fired up for great moments in Mean Green history. And we've got a really good one today to take another look at, a deep dive from 2017, one of the great Seth Luttrell seasons, and the emergence of Mason Fine as a dominant quarterback, just a sophomore that year. But he came up with one of the great moments that, well, anyone that was there will always remember. We simply call it the drive. And I'll have an expert join me here in just a minute to help us walk through that. But first, as you know, I keep a lot of things here on my back porch. All of them have been either donated or given to me. Nothing is in violation of state rules. For instance, this gift, which we received at the end of that 2017 season, the fifth trip to the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl for North Texas. It was a championship season. Now, when you talk championships, it makes me think of my friends Kurt and Roy, Peanut, and Fern, because they break out this polyester mean green jacket anytime there's a championship. And you can see, if I can do this right, lots of signatures through the years. Hayden Fry is right in there. Over here, you see Grant McCasland at the top. There's a Mean Joe Green. When the green jacket comes out, big things are happening. And I'm curious, as I welcome my guest speaker in today, Dave Barnett, my broadcast partner. You've been around Mean Green Athletics a lot longer than me. Do you have a green polyester jacket such as that?
No, I only know of one that's still in existence, and it is not in my closet. No. Fond memories of it because it, harkens back to one of the great eras of Mean Green sports. But no, I do not have one. I have the cap. Probably should be wearing it right now with the flying worm apple green logo that Kelly Fry, in fact, sent me a few years ago, Hayden's son. But no, I do not have that jacket.
That would have been a hot jacket for you and I to travel in. But as I understand it, and I have Bill Mercer's old one in my office, that was...
Why don't you ever wear it on the air?
You know, I don't fit in it very well. And this pandemic has not helped that. I'm not getting any clothes. By the way, how have you been? You and I last were in person together at the end of that basketball season when they ripped the rug out from underneath us in Frisco. We've been on some Zooms together with our Hall of Fame committee, but tell us how you and your family are doing. And I know you welcomed another grandkid right before all this happened. Have you had a chance to see that young man?
Actually, twice. Young Callum Knight, who looks like he will be a nose tackle, was born February 26th. I saw him not long after that. And the second and still most recent time I've seen him was March 12th. And March 12th was the day where sports shut down. We were on the bus heading to shoot around before the quarterfinal of the basketball tournament in Frisco. And word came that at first the tournament would continue with no fans. And then the tournament was canceled, but the NCAA tournament was still on for a few hours anyway. And so bus turned around. Then the mission was, okay, find a place to practice because as the regular season champ, then, got to get ready for March Madness. And then later that was canceled. And I found out that was canceled on my way to my daughter Allie's place in Dallas to see her then about 2-week-old son. Found that out on the way, spent an hour or two there, and that is still the last time I've seen him. But he's a strapping young lad at now about 3 months.
Well, congratulations. And hopefully things are loosening up a little bit. But, on our campus and certainly in our athletic department, we're trying to be very safe about the return to campus. And football coaches will be coming back shortly. Athletes will begin to trickle in again in a safe manner. And the Seth Luttrell era continues. And today you and I are going to look at maybe one of the signature moments, not only for the head coach and his offense, which coming into this game was averaging around 39 points a game, but his sophomore quarterback, Mason Fine. This is the game against UT San Antonio. And North Texas comes in 3-2, 2-0 in conference play. UTSA 3-1, but 0-1. And yet this rivalry is on. And I'm curious, before we jump into highlights, what were your recollections of the opportunity to improve to 3-0 in league play, to take a bit of a stranglehold on Conference USA West against the Roadrunners?
Expected a win, and that was really the first year that I got a true sense of the depth of the rivalry. And I think before this game, the signature game was 2013, where somehow UTSA came in and cost, a Conference USA division championship. And I think clearly the best team in the league that year, but somehow they slipped up against UTSA. And so that wasn't that long before this game. And it's early, and the stakes aren't quite, as set as they were in 2013. At this point, we had a sense of who Mason was going to be. We'd seen him come into the fourth quarter of the opener, take his red shirt off, and immediately seize the starting quarterback job from a graduate transfer from Alabama. That alone told us, there's something special going on here. But this UTSA game was the game where we really saw all his gifts on display. And looking back at some of the highlights, and we'll see some of these highlights, but the way he's able to get out of situations, make NFL type passes. Some of the greatest passes he ever threw were in this game. The toughness, hanging in for the pass that wanted, all that was on display. If you had to look at one game in Mason's career and get a sense of who he was, I think it would be this game.
Boy, I completely agree. So let's jump into some of the highlights. The Roadrunners at Apogee Stadium to take on the Mean Green. And when you look back on this game, remember UTSA was a quality team, especially on special teams, Dave. And they opened the game pinning North Texas deep, and field position would be really pretty poor all game long for North Texas, which may have served as a little foreshadowing.
This was a really good UTSA team, by the now previous coaching staff. We're watching them on defense right now, but the thing that immediately hit me watching them in these uniforms was it seems like we're watching football from 1978. We're going to see when they're on offense, their quarterback is under center, they're lining up in I formations. It doesn't look like modern football. But they had some talent, and they had some real defensive talent on the field here. And this was a game they had a chance to get blown out early. Because look at the talent that's out there, for North Texas. There's Mason, there's Jeffrey Wilson now in the NFL. There's Jalen Guyton now in the NFL. Jalen Darden and number 84 back then, Rico Bussey. This is the early moments, but this turns into a big game for Jalen Guyton. In a lot of ways, this was kind of his coming out party as well.
Right. And, North Texas was coming off a bye 2 weeks earlier at Southern Miss. Guyton had a huge game, so he really ends up with 2 weeks over the course of 3 weeks with the bye in the middle of monster numbers. And you start to see North Texas do some different things, a little jet sweep action. You could tell that Seth Luttrell found some ways to really pick at the UTSA defense.
I think every team that scouted this game that was on the rest of the 2017 schedule looked at this tape, and they knew what they were up against. Because now, as we said, you're starting to get a feel for what Mason is capable of, but you're also seeing the weapons at his disposal. A couple of whom are in the NFL now.
Yeah, there were a lot of depth at wide receiver and at running back. And, for North Texas, to have Jeff Wilson back there meant you had a special running back. But on this play alone, you see what I thought he was the best at. He picks up the blitz, and he allows for this play to happen. Here's another look at it.
Yep. That is an NFL type pickup there. And it's something that maybe 1% of the people watching notice, but the play doesn't happen without that ability to block and protect his quarterback.
And I felt like the loss of Jeff Wilson was probably the worst loss for Mason Fine, because he really did allow Fine to hang in the pocket without being hit a lot. And here you'll see Mason showing, like you said, his toughness and his desire to prove that he was durable. He doesn't get in here, but he fights really hard. The knee goes down early. That's the tenacity you and I came to really appreciate from Mason Fine.
Yeah, I don't remember him calling his own number or being the designated runner very often after this game, but he was several times. The previous year at the Alamo Dome was the signature run of his career. First play of the second half, 80 yards untouched straight up the middle. So that showed his flat out speed was there. And then runs like this one show his toughness.
Yep. So they go with him again, this time to the left, and he is unscathed into the south end zone. But Mason Fine ends up putting North Texas on the board. And what happened a lot that year was North Texas taking an early drive, their initial drive, and turning it into points. I think that really became a hallmark of that 2017 team.
Yeah, opposition constantly playing from behind. The best first quarter, maybe at this point of the entire Luttrell era, was Louisiana Tech before the huge crowd and the Joe Green statue had been unveiled. And first quarter, 222 yards and 21 points. It went downhill from there, but that was a trademark of a Graham Harrell attack those years. Well scouted, great, early scripting, and immediately put the opposition back on their heels.
Now it's UTSA's turn to get the ball, and they had quality players. Sturm, a big, rugged quarterback, Rhodes at running back, and you're going to see them with their first opportunity against a Mean Green defense that had a nice secondary effort this day. Keemon Hall, Eric Jenkins had big games. Rhodes there on the ground gets stopped. It wasn't one of the overall best defenses, but it certainly allowed that offense to flourish.
Yeah, and I look at these UTSA sets with Sturm under center. It's like I'm watching the 70s Denver Broncos and those colors. It's like Craig Morton handing off to Rob Lytle. I don't remember UTSA having that much of a throwback offense. And it really looks throwback in the current era.
Here's another example, though, of their special teams pinning North Texas deep, and the punt that gets another kind roll. I mean, that was one thing that happened this whole game to keep UTSA not only in it, but at some point taking advantage of the lead in this game.
Yeah, I mean, they hired Frank Wilson, who had not been a coordinator, because he had been one of the best recruiters in the country at LSU, and he recruited some talent. It didn't turn out to be, enough to sustain his regime at UTSA, but a lot of that talent was really on display in this game, and the way they were able to come back and seem to have the game put away with a minute to go. Not very many teams could have done that at Apogee against that North Texas team.
North Texas will go back to the ground game. Why not? Wilson is the guy that really kind of keeps things honest, and you have to have that if you're going to have explosive plays. Here he is turning up the middle, but this will set up a 2nd and 5. And 2nd and 5 under Seth Luttrell is, let's dial up something big, right?
Yep. It's let's see what we can get downfield. And interesting thing about this play was it wasn't play action. There wasn't a pump fake. And look how open Jalen Guyton gets. With no subterfuge at all. He just runs 10 yards past his defender.
In going back and re-listening and watching, you made a great point here. Press coverage was not going to contain Jalen Guyton, and that was one thing they just never learned in the UTSA secondary. They thought they could keep up with him, and Fine can chuck it with the best of them.
Yeah, showed it here. Perfectly protected, at least enough time to get this pass off, and perfectly thrown, and that can't be fun to have been number one chasing him in the UTSA uniform at that point.
Well, this gets the crowd fired up, and in this day and age of college football, it's really about explosive plays. Every team is going to get them, and again, I go back to UTSA's special teams allowing them to enjoy either putting North Texas in a precarious position or to have great field position themselves. They rip off a really nice kickoff return here to put them back in very good shape.
Yeah, again, they had lots of individually talented players out there. By this point, Frank Wilson had been able to, get some of his recruits on the field, and you can see why he targeted them. That didn't happen all that often, but that was an untouched kickoff return, and they're running off 17 quick points here at this point in the game. And again, defensive breakdown there, but Dalton Sturm, good enough quarterback to immediately see it and take advantage.
Mean Green take over after that. They need to settle things down. Fine loses his helmet on a play, so in comes Quinn Shanbor. But you know what? We didn't worry a whole lot back then because Quinn was a guy that had some decent moments, and here he hands it off.
Always a good option that year. Hand it to number 3. Yeah, Quinn had come in at Iowa, and when Mason was knocked out, looked like he might not return. That game for a long stretch was on Quinn Shanbor's shoulders, and things went fine.
Final comeback, but he can't make this one in double coverage. So North Texas going to have to settle for a more field goal. That's a player that shouldn't be forgotten either. Boy, was he Mr. Consistent. PAT, school record consecutive, and he was very good from all ranges.
It still amazes me that he's not in the NFL. He was a few years too late to make the all-century team. If he had been of a slightly earlier era, he's the all-century kicker. He's the best kicker in program history.
So you're going to put him in the same rare air as Iseed Curry.
Oh, I think Iseed would agree. I mean, the numbers, the accuracy and the productivity, just you can't argue with it. Trevor Moore was the guy.
Well,
and again, UTSA out of the offset eye. I don't remember them running this throwback offense. More like, Iowa was running. It's more like something you'd still see in the Big Ten, but not in Conference USA anymore.
No, that's back-to-back plays with Sturm coming off the offset eye up the middle and then a punishing run to the end zone. This is a big, durable quarterback, and he allows the Roadrunners to once again take the lead. So it's a seesaw game, a really good football game at this point. But North Texas not used to playing from behind late in games, at least not at this point.
And, come back here again, Jalen Guyton. You see why he teamed up with Kyler Murray at Allen, and they never lost a game in 3 years. And you see why Notre Dame wanted to sign him. And again, you see why Jeffrey Wilson is with the 49ers now. This is just, it's fun to look back and remember all the talent was on the field on that team.
Well, and you talked about depth. There's Nick Smith, another punishing runner. So even when Wilson needed a rare blow, you could count on other guys to come in and run it with purpose. And here's Fine. He's going to check it deep again. And this is one of the more beautiful throws of his career.
Just perfect. Again, UTSA secondary can't keep Jalen from running past them. And Mason just drops it straight down the chimney into his arms.
Mason was getting used to 300-plus passing games and multiple touchdown strikes. And, again, just a sophomore. But we could sense it even up at the 5th level, just how much command he had on the game. And, in this seesaw game, you need big plays. But UTSA is going to get back in it and take another lead. And time is starting to become a concern here. You've got to manage the clock. Timeouts end up being a tough thing for North Texas late. And a lot of it's because of the ability of UTSA to go on a long drive.
This is where I'm sure to a man they thought, okay, we're taking this game and there's not going to be much they can do about it. We've, weathered their big start, come back with our own big plays. And, North Texas defense rears up there. I think EJG shows up. But, this is where UTSA has reason to believe they're on the verge of a huge road win. This, as you look back now, this might be the game that turned that entire coaching regime one way as opposed to the other. If they hang on and win this game, there's no telling where both programs go from that point.
Yeah, I think you're right. And from a UTSA standpoint, obviously the needle started pointing the other way, but a very, very close game. And Sturm bails them out again with a quarterback run that may not have been designed, but he leaked out, and then Clay breaking tackles. So they're in a nice rhythm right here.
Yeah, again, resourceful, gets out of pressure, finds man completely on the other end of the field. How he saw him, he just sensed that he was there. Defense let him go. UTSA seems to be pretty well in command of the game at this point.
Yeah, Jalen Rhodes with that little leak out and a great cutback to score. So now everyone up and standing at apogee. The defense needs a late stop just to keep hopes alive. And, we haven't talked about all the personnel, but there were a lot of guys that could make plays on the Mean Green defense. And UTSA got pretty vanilla here. They're trying to run clock. They're trying to run up the middle, and it's not working.
Yeah, out of that quarterback under center, offset eye, pound it straight ahead. And the play that should be more remembered and better celebrated is the stop on third down to force them to punt. And they get a perfect punt. The only thing they needed here was one more first down. Couldn't get that. Defense wouldn't allow it. So here comes a perfect punt.
Absolutely.
The sand wedge backs up right there.
Yes. After the Rod Young stop on third down, another great special teams play, and North Texas now is faced with 98 yards to go, no timeouts, and 67 seconds left. This, Dave, is where we start the drive. And it starts with Mason Fine saying, I'll get 2 yards deep in the end zone, but we're going to throw to get out of trouble. We're not going to run.
Yeah, I think he said after the game when he was asked, well, what are you thinking? You had no timeouts, 98 yards. He said, we're going to win this. That's what every great quarterback thinks at all times. This is where we could see exactly how his mind works. At no point did he seem smaller than the moment. Not every single pass was complete, but he never loses sight of where he is, where his receivers are. Caught out of bounds here, but stops the clock. As I said, this is everything we came to expect and appreciate by Mason. And this by Mike Lawrence, setting up a later huge catch by Mike Lawrence.
Yeah, you saw that incomplete pass. That would end up being the only incomplete pass for Fine on the drive. And here's the play that hopefully people won't forget about the drive. You always talk about the play that puts you on the scoreboard, and it's coming up. But this catch on a 49-yard heave was really something special.
This may be the best single pass Mason ever threw. Because he's got to scramble a little bit. Somehow he finds Mike Lawrence way downfield, barely inbounds, perfectly thrown, perfectly executed by Mike Lawrence, and now stopping the clock and a couple plays away from, the ultimate pay dirt throw.
Yeah, and UTSA is going to burn their final timeout. So you're at the 31-yard line. Basically 30 seconds left. Crunch time has arrived.
Just short of the first down, diving catch. Jalen Darden, number 84 then. Time clicking down, I think inside 20 seconds. Yep. Stops it there, I think about 17 seconds.
Well, you were spot on. That's what I got in my notes. 17 seconds left. And this next play, you had a fantastic signature call on. And that's going to be something fans can listen to as we dissect all this. But just your thoughts as you set the line of scrimmage.
I'm seeing the safety blitz. I'm assuming Mason sees the safety blitz coming. And he saw it. And as he described afterwards, this is a play they've worked on backwards and forwards in practice. So he had faith that even if it was basically a blind throw across the middle of the field, that Rico Bussey would be there. He would see the same thing Mason saw, which is Mason about to get splattered, and the ball is there. And at this point, Rico's athletic ability takes over. The only question I had was, did he maintain position inbounds up the sideline as he tightrope from the 10, almost stepped out of the 5. And then we look back and, oh, yeah, Mason still hasn't gotten up.
Yeah, Mason did not see that final play, and he was concerned about if it hadn't scored, he didn't want to have to burn a timeout they didn't have for injury or to have to come out. So he's laying down there talking to Jeff Smith, the trainer, and Mike House, the doctor, and they're like, no, we scored. He pops up, pumps the fist in the air, and it's one of the great moments in sports because I think you and I both felt like when they took over with 98 yards and no timeouts, that they definitely had a chance to do it. We've been watching them work against bad field position all game. It was a terrific game in terms of third down and fourth down conversion. It was almost like that game had to end that way.
As you look back, yeah. But at that point, UTSA had every reason to think they had control. The fact that you've got the entire field to go in a minute and no timeouts requires perfection by the offense. That's why that's so hard to pull off a late drive and a comeback like that, because there is zero margin for error. And the closest that drive saw to an error was really actually a great play and a great catch that just happened to be out of bounds. But otherwise, spot on perfection in terms of execution by everyone. And it culminates in, the ultimate Mason Fine moment. He knows he's about to get splattered, but he also knows they've worked on a play long enough that he has faith that his receiver, Rico Bussey Jr., is going to be where he's supposed to be. Rico sees the same thing, is where he needs to be. Athleticism takes over at that point, and now there's a poster to celebrate that moment and that entire drive.
Well, Mason would finish that drive 5 of 6 passing. He had a 49-yard strike to Michael Lawrence, a thing of beauty, then the 22-yard game winner to Rico Bussey Jr., the 98-yard drive at the time, the longest of the season, and Fine finished with 354 yards, 20 of 34 passing, 4 touchdowns, and we came to kind of expect that week in, week out, and just a great look back, Dave. And now let's look ahead a little bit. Obviously, everyone's planning on college football to happen according to Hoyle. We don't know yet if it's going to happen just exactly the way it's laid out. Everyone's really concerned about safely getting back to campus, but we want people to consider buying their season tickets now, despite the mystery and the question mark. In fact, North Texas has a ticket assurance program going right now that if something should happen that would alter the course of the season or the number of games, you can get a refund, or you can simply take that money and push it forward to future events or the Mean Green Scholarship Fund. I think right now that's the best message we can send is have some faith this is going to happen. Get behind this program, because if we can get out of this pandemic smartly, it's going to be a lot of fun to have college football back.
Yeah, at no point will your money go to waste. Hopefully it will go toward tickets for a full season and even an on-time season. But if it doesn't, it will go somewhere else along the line, scholarship fund, future tickets, whatever it is. So we're in this static point where everything is still basically frozen, but that's not going to be forever. And so, when things finally get regenerated, now is a chance to be a source of support and show some faith that the future will again feature Mean Green sports, and in particular Mean Green football.
Well, we look forward to that. I look forward to being back on the fifth level of Apogee with you, and I appreciate you taking some time to zoom in. You and I've zoomed too much. We need to get back to where we're at least 6 feet away, but thank you so much. You do obviously the best job of remembering everything that happened, not only in any game, but a litany of pop culture, historical, and musical things. So it was great having you on this.
Well, the thing I remember personally is how it has not happened very often, but on that Bussey touchdown, my voice got out of control. The moment and the emotion of the moment, and just the amazing sight of what you're seeing, that kind of overwhelmed my vocal ability as he got that last 10 yards covered up the right sideline. So that's how I'll remember it, is that was overwhelming.
As my wife always says, nobody's voice sells excitement better than Dave Barnett's, and that was obviously one of the exciting games. So thanks to Dave Barnett. Thanks to Zach Powell, who's done a tremendous job on all these productions, a lot of post-production work, because we end up talking about a lot of things that aren't necessarily on the tape that we're watching. But appreciate his fine work throughout this pandemic to provide you with a lot of great content. He and Matt Sizik have just done yeoman work to catalog a lot of great things while we do have a little bit more time on our hands. But I hope everyone stays safe out there. I hope if you are going back to work that you can be safe about that, stay healthy, and get ready for Mean Green football, hopefully on September 5th. That's when we come back with Seth Luttrell football. For Dave Barnett, Zach Powell, Hank Dickinson, here at home, saying so long and go Mean Green.